Farrik!
Hello and welcome to Dank Farrik, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Carlos, and I'm here with the other host,
Tyler Mendelson.
and we're here to talk about Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Now, Tyler. At the time, it was marketed as the end of the saga,
The end.
and it was for a good while. You can find that there's like a 60 minutes interview with George when this movie was coming out, where I think Barbara Walters or something, asks him like, what if somebody else comes and wants to direct episode 7? And he's like, no, it'll never happen. There's now episode 7.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. It was Barbara Walters.
And now look at us now. There was an
He
episode
sold
7.
it to the white slavers.
Oh god, don't even start
That
with
was George Lucas saying that, not
right,
me.
right. Now
Don't
you're
quote
gonna
me
try
and
to
cancel me.
How dare you? No, but the great thing about this movie was the fact that it was going to be the bridge, because you started watching the prequels, and you also watched the originals, and they didn't feel like part of the same. Like the prequels, like the technology they were made with, visually, aesthetically, even the story, the dialogue was stylized in a different way than the originals.
Yeah, they feel like completely different trilogy. Like obviously there are different trilogies, but they
Mhm.
feel like different entities within the same universe.
Right. And the whole promise of the prequels, of course, was, we're going to see the story of Anakin Skywalker. So it's like the Titanic sinking. You know that at the end, uh, there's a dramatic irony or the fact that he's going to turn evil. And this is the movie that has all the catharsis. Like the whole reason for having a prequel trilogy is for this movie to exist.
It's good that you say that, because I wanted to mention that you could just tell, like, with the way episode 1 and 2 played out, and like how much like people like ill received it and all that kind of stuff, you could just tell episode 3 was what George wanted to make. Like, this was the whole goal, and he wanted to get to this point. Like, this is the story he really wanted to tell, and it shows just by how much people enjoy this film compared to the other two of the trilogy.
You know what? My whole thing is, I don't know if I contest what you're saying, because I think he did want to say the whole thing. I think it's what the fans wanted to see the most out of the prequels. Like what
I mean,
it
I would say that too, but
yeah,
I just
more
think
so than the storyteller being, maybe.
I just feel like George was all about showing the tragedy of Darth Vader happen,
Hmm.
and this was obviously the culmination of that.
Of course.
And this movie just had, compared to the other two, it had so much happen within this 2 hour time frame
Hmm.
that the other movies can't really compare. It's not really fair to even compare them to it, because it's just such an eventful film. It might be the most eventful film in all of Star Wars, just based on like how much story beats happen that are just such major like implications for the rest of all of Star Wars.
Hmm. That's why, as a kid, and even now, it's probably my favorite prequel, and I think it's a lot of people's for sure.
Honestly, man, like, as I've always enjoyed the prequels, but they still seemed, they still felt, subpar compared to the originals to me.
Hmm.
But as time has gone on, I've enjoyed the prequels a lot more, especially episode 3, and I honestly might say episode 3 is probably in contention for my favorite Star Wars film ever.
So if you get to pick, say, you get to pick your top 3 Star Wars films, and there's a rule that you get to pick only your favorite one from each trilogy. For me, Revenge of the Sith would be up there, and
Definitely.
I agree with you that it has carved its place as one of the top Star Wars movies in a world where the original trilogy is held to such a high regard,
Yeah.
and some people consider them unmovable. But now that the prequels have had their time in the spotlight and they have come and gone, Like a lot of the kids that grew up with them are like, Revenge of the Sith is up there. It's probably
Yeah.
people some it's like some people's Empire Strikes Back in many ways,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which I think is a valid feeling. Um,
Yeah.
but so this is the one where it starts to feel more like the original trilogy, and it starts right
Yep.
from the top. First of all, the title, of course, Revenge of the Sith, is a riff on George Lucas's original title for Return of the
Revenge of the
Jedi,
Jedi.
which was Revenge of the Jedi. And right in the crawl, you hear evil is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere, and you hear about the Findish. Is that how you pronounce that?
Fiendish. Fiendish.
Findish.
Excuse
General Grievous.
Carlos's Panamanian accent.
You no, you can't excuse it. There's nothing wrong with it.
It's beautiful.
Thank you, my darling. Um, no, evil is everywhere, and it's kind of this point where the Republic is slowly morphing into the Empire, and the good guys are becoming the bad guys, which is of course the story of the whole prequels, but also especially of this movie. Um,
Yeah.
and right out of the gate, you see like it begins with the Battle of Coruscant on top of Coruscant, and it's a great oneer.
That
It's going.
I have to say, regardless of like what Star Wars film is like best in everyone's opinion, Revenge of the Sith, bar none for me, is the best intro to any Star Wars film. The music, the way the ships like are like you just see Anakin and Obi-Wan ships, and then once they do that turn and you just see the entire battle over Coruscant,
Hmm.
it's so sick. And you just hear those war drums by John Williams. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
such a
Oh
sick,
yeah.
epic intro to a movie. Oh,
I love the reveal when the
I get
two
goosebumps every time.
the two fighters are like flying like on top of the surface of the Star Destroyer, and then they curve, and then they reveal the huge ass battle going down,
Yep.
and it's like wow,
It's just fucking
it's
beautiful.
so good. And so the first thing you see is, of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan doing their thing. They're going to rescue the Chancellor, who had been kidnapped by the fiendish General Grievous, and you see Anakin, and he's in a very different place from where he was in Attack of the Clones. He no longer has the Jedi braid, the Padawan braid, which goes
Yeah.
well for him, and
Hmm.
he has a scar on his eye. I think his right eye, left eye. Do you know this?
It is
It's a
his
good piece of trivia.
left eye, I believe.
I think so. Uh, which of course suggests that the war has taken a toll, and that you know it's been something that's happening for the last 3 years, which is I think the time span between episode 2 and 3.
It's his
Uh,
right eye.
it's just right. Yeah, I told you. Uh, and that idea of the warrior Anakin, the fact that he's seen some shit, the fact that he has no right arm, that he has a scar on his eye, um, that him and Obi Wan are brothers in arms.
Hmm.
Him and the clones as well, because you see that little moment when he's trying to save one of the clones, and Obi Wan is like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, which right
They
out
have a
of the
job to do. So
yeah, exactly, which establishes their difference as characters right away, which is that
hmm.
Anakin is more emotional, more emotional of the
Yep.
two, and Obi Wan is the more rational, like Jedi's are
Yeah.
supposed to be in this timeline, in this part of the timeline. Um, and also it makes Anakin a sympathetic character because he also says like, "I'm not living without you, Master," which is something that I
Yeah.
think was probably missing in Episode 2, but by design, of course. The idea that they were brothers, that they were good friends. In Episode 2, they had a very adversarial relationship, but in this one, you can tell right away that they're really close, and they're equals in many senses, even though he still calls him Master.
Hmm. I just like that, what is it,
Mhm.
3 years that have
Yeah,
passed
yeah.
since episode two? Yeah. Time has passed and the Clone Wars have been going on for this whole time, and they've been, generals in this war. They've been into some shit.
Hmm.
So we get these characters at like the height of everything. And it's just a really exciting time to see them like be a really good duo, which makes Anakin's betrayal that much more hard hitting.
Yeah, of course. You gotta set it up right away. And
Yeah.
you see that this is the coolest moment ever since I saw the movie as a 9-year-old, when they arrive into the ship where General Grievous and the Chancellor are, and Obi-Wan does this Jedi jump. You know what I'm talking about? And then he
Yeah.
like cleans house, and they both clean house, and it's amazing, and it's so funny to me
Mm-hmm.
that it happened twice in episode 2 and in episode 3. It happened that Obi-Wan is always playing like the more restrained character, like rational character, and when he sees the I'm talking about episode 2 now. When he sees the probe droid attacking Padme, whatever that is, he jumps out of a fucking window to grab onto it.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be the cool, calm and collected, and then Anakin has to run to get a ship. And in this
Yeah.
one, Obi-Wan jumps and he does a whole dramatic thing and destroys a bunch of battle droids in the process. And Anakin is like unstrapping himself in the ship. And it's interesting that I think that they kind of switch personalities for those like moments of truth, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where it's kind of fun. Maybe they learned from each other. I don't know. It's
I
also
just like these little quips that they have
yeah.
like between each other, where they're talking about like Anakin always saving Obi-Wan's life, and
Mhm.
Obi-Wan's just like that business on Kato Nemoria doesn't count.
Oh yeah,
They
that's
have
great.
these little like they have him in what all well no episode 2 and 3 they
Yeah,
do it.
I haven't felt you
So it's just
since
it's nice to
yeah
hear like, oh, I wonder what happened on that planet.
Nest of
They have
Thunder.
these little backstories.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, in episode 1, they didn't like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan didn't have those moments when they talk about past missions. But I guess their relationship is a little bit different.
It's brief.
Which mission do they reference
They
to?
don't talk about specific missions.
Yeah. Well, in the Clone Wars, I remember the whole Obi-Wan and the Duchess of Mandalore's storyline. He talked about how he knew her from a mission with Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
So they talk about it in the Clone Wars, which adds
Mm-hmm.
dimensions because we don't really know a lot of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's training. Well, we do from
Yeah.
the books now, but anyway, digress. Um, R2 comes into the picture. He's of course the savior of all. Um, General Grievous shows up with a really bad cough. I like the idea that all the prequels villains, like there are, if you put them all together, like Maul and Dooku and Grievous, they all uh, sum up into Darth Vader. You know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the evil iconography of Maul, and the fallen Jedi that is Dooku, and the cyborg, the half machine, or well, not even half, or like 85% machine, 15%
I
organic.
never really thought about that. That's a good way of
Yeah,
reading into that.
and
That's a
you see the cough of
yeah.
the general is kind of like a prelude to the breath of Vader.
And also, for those who don't know, a really cool thing in the original Clone Wars animation, it shows how General Grievous gets that cough.
Hmm,
Mace Windu uses the Force and crushes his chest, and
not
you just
canon.
see like this crushing blow to his chest, and that is how he develops this chronic cough that he has.
Yeah, but that's all legends, though.
I don't. I mean, you know,
No, 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 no.
don't ruin it.
All right. Well, I
There's
did
no other way
when they
that
filmed it.
it's, there's no other way they explain it. So
Well, I'm
same
sure
thing with Shang Chi's death.
he
Aside
smoked too
from like
much or something.
the um the deleted scene where she gets killed by Anakin, like there's no other explanation of her death.
But it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to happen on screen in order for there to not be another explanation. They could just make something up or whatever.
Or just leave
Another
it
thing
at nothing.
that show had, that micro series, that what's the Samurai Jack guy? The guy who did the animation for that show, for the Clone Wars show
Yeah,
before
same
the
one.
current Clone Wars. Um, they also explain how he got the scar, which was Ventress slashed his face. In a very dramatic fight. That fight, remember that fight? That fight was sick.
Yep.
Like them. I think they were in Yavin, if I'm not mistaken.
That Clone Wars was just very cool.
It was very cool, but it was also very OP.
I just hated the underwater scenes.
Yeah, with the wobbly lightsabers.
Yeah, I've
That was
never been
weird.
a fan of that shit. It was in both Clone Wars series, and
Mm.
I'd never cared for it.
And Kid Fisto was also like shirtless in both. They need to get Kid Fisto underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we get the two Jedi Knights confront Count Dooku, to rescue the Chancellor. And there's this moment when Obi-Wan says, "This time we will do it together," and Anakin says, "I was about to say that." This is, of course, a reference to the fight they had with Dooku at the end of Episode 2, and it doesn't make sense anymore, taking into account the clones. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it's a kind of a weird comment because since the Clone Wars came out, now that they fought Dooku more than once, and pretty recently as well, which also um, lays in, like, it makes weird the line where he says, my powers have doubled since the last time we met," because in the context of watching the movies,
I mean, maybe since the very last time they met, his powers did double.
that's fine,
It's
but
also just a weird line in general, like a cheesy, my powers have doubled, like,
yeah, but it's fucking Star Wars, it's all dumb, but it's all great. Don't it has to be like there has to be some like cheesy, like
You
Mortal
know what
Kombat
we do
line.
with dumb lines, Carlos?
What?
We make them memes. And that line is no exception.
It is a meme, isn't it? Well, there are so many lines in this movie that are memes.
It is a meme.
This is the
All
memeiest
right, listen.
Star Wars
All right,
movie.
I guess we'll preface this now. Episode 3, out of all the films in all of Star Wars, gave birth and is the biggest meme machine. You can literally take
Meme machine.
99.9% of the lines out of this film and turn them into memes. And people have. And that is something that gave way into making this movie so much more popular in recent days, is the memes from the different lines spoken in this movie. And it honestly makes you enjoy the movie even more. Like, at least for me, it does. Just,
Well, you
watching the
underestimated
film,
its powers.
it's so quotable. It's so quotable. And you laugh at the different times that, you see a meme and you hear a line, you're like, yeah.
I do wonder
That's
why Revenge of the Sith, out of all the three all the three prequels have memes, but Revenge of the Sith probably gets the most of it.
It definitely does. I just think the way the lines themselves are just so memeable and
Yeah.
rememberable.
Rememberable.
Memorable.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that like shitty action movie, My Powers Have Doubled Since the Last Time We Met count. I think that's good because it goes right to the point. And if there's something that George isn't, it's subtle. So we get this fight, which all this stuff implicates that they haven't met since episode 2, even though we know in the prequels, in the Clone Wars, sorry, they did meet several times. And the last time they met, and this is something that always bugged me, the last time they met was at the end of season 6, and Clone Wars had 7 seasons. So I think they've met pretty recently. So it's kind of weird. That line still doesn't hold up for me, but I'll let it slide.
Wasn't the Order 66 in the Clone Wars season 8?
7.
I thought it was 8.
No, 7 is the last one.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, on the other side of the ship, the Supremacy, which is the name of the General Grievous's cruiser.
No, it's not.
Isn't it? It is.
No, it's the Invisible Hand.
Which one's the Supremacy?
I don't know, but his ship is the Invisible Hand.
Yeah.
Google it right now. Google it, Carlos. Cue
Fuck,
Jeopardy music.
you know what the Supremacy is?
What?
Supreme Leader.
That's Snoke Show. Yup, that's Snoke Show. Yup, there we go.
You fucking got me. Damn it.
The
The Invisible Hand, I knew that, of course. Any like if you don't know what the invisible hand is, it's a poster. But on the other side of the invisible hand, as I said previously, R2D2 is killing a bunch of droids, a bunch of New Yorker droids. I guess I don't know what they are. They're like extras in like a weird comedy.
It's weird how much the droids within the 3 movies, the battle droids, have changed like voices.
They become goofier as time goes.
In episode 2, the super battle droids were more of this really deep robotic sound. And then in episode 3, they have this more high pitched, like they give them more character. And I think it was a good change. And they make jokes and they're funny. The ones that they're like bullying R2, but then R2 pulls this move out of his pocket and lights him on fire, which is pretty cool. It's
with like the rockets that he doesn't show up later in the original trilogy for some reason.
There wasn't really an instance where he needed to.
We already talked about it. There was. Okay.
I disagree.
No. What do you mean you
there
disagree?
Was a time. There was
almost
many
eaten by a
instances
swamp monster.
There was many instances where R2 could have, or not R2, the Jedi could have used super speed, but they didn't ever again.
They were tired. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they need 2 Jedis. They have to connect in order for it to be like a group effort or something. I don't know. Anyway, R2 is killing a bunch of people with his magical rockets. Well, droids, but they're people too. And one of the reasons why I think the droids are goofier and dumber and kind of funnier is because if you remember in Phantom Menace, they were run by a central computer. And at this point, like episode 2 onwards, they all have like independent memory or thinking or whatever. And I don't think it's very sophisticated hardware, or I don't know. I don't know what their RAM memory is, but I don't think it's very good. And it also speaks to the fact that General Grievous is also kind of an inept leader, general. He like they talk about him as being a coward. And, if the leader of the droid army is a coward and he's shitty, like what are his subjects gonna be like? Which also I guess you could make a joke about General Hux right about now.
Yeah.
And so Anakin kills Dooku. Pretty big moment.
Great scene, honestly.
Do it.
I really love that moment. It's cool how Dooku dies right in the beginning. Yeah, we get another amazing meme quote of "Do it," and we hear that little sense of Palpatine.
I love the fact that Dooku looks at Palpatine when Palpatine is like, "Yeah, kill him, do it, decapitate him," and Dooku is like, "What the fuck?"
I wanted to bring this up, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It baffles me that you have to think, what was Dooku's plan? He starts to like egg Anakin on, which sounds like he wants to turn him to the dark side during this fight. After it seems like in episode 2, he wanted to turn Obi-Wan to the dark side. And, he's fighting Anakin. Anakin chops his hands off. And then Palpatine's plan with him is obviously shown. He shows his hand and wants Anakin to kill him. And then why doesn't Dooku defend himself or say, like, he's the Sith Lord you're looking for, blah, 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 blah. He doesn't reveal anything. He just sits there in disbelief. Like, really? You're not going to think that your master's going to try to, like, ice you off to take Anakin instead? You really just, like, fell for this shit?
Yeah. I remember in the novel, I think, there was a passage when that shit happens, like his hands get cut off. And I think the passage says something to the effect that, like, at that moment, Dooku knew that his master had egged him on this whole time and that he was never really going to be a part of the big plan. Because if you think about it, in Clone Wars, he also explained that Maul knew the broad strokes, the fact that the big plan was to turn the Republic into the Empire. He didn't know the details of how he was going to do it. So both Maul and Dooku assumed they were going to be a part of that they were going to be part of the new empire that Sidious was trying to build.
The way I look at it that like makes me accept it a lot more is I think of the rule of two with the Sith and how the apprentice is always trying to take the master's place.
Yeah.
And I think with that, the apprentice has some modicum of respect for the master, and if the master bests the apprentice rather than the apprentice bests the master. So once Dooku realized he'd been defeated, he just accepts it rather than tries to still continue to defeat Palpatine,
Right.
you know?
Well, at that point, there's nothing
He
to
just
do,
says,
really.
"Damn, he got me. Like
Yeah.
this is clearly the plan."
Yeah. No, I agree. Um, but it's also interesting that Anakin says it's not the Jedi way. I shouldn't, and then he says he was an unarmed prisoner because this is the exact same position that he finds himself to be the judge of later in the movie when Mace is about to execute Palpatine. You know, and he says the same thing. It's not the Jedi way.
Yeah.
He should be arrested. Should be put on trial.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts to plant that seed, that idea in Anakin's mind that the Jedi have, you know, have fallen. And it's also interesting because the big motivation of the whole movie is people always talk to it's in there that the reason he turns is because of Padme, and that's a big reason for it. But another reason is because he genuinely believed the Jedi were evil and that they have become corrupt, and I think he's justified in a lot of that. And I think it was Dave Filoni who said that if Mace Windu had actually executed the Chancellor, he'd probably been arrested. And because as far that he just killed the leader of the Senate, so from that point of view, he was, you know, he was being evil, or he's doing something unlawful. He was taking justice into his own hands, and he's supposed to be a peacekeeper.
Yeah.
So it speaks to the trajectory of the Jedi in general.
Yeah, it just shows that the Jedi have lost their way, and it gives Anakin a good reason to have turned against them because they failed him. It's not that he wanted to turn evil even after the whole thing with Padme. Like they really failed him in his most vulnerable moments when he needed them to step up.
Yeah. So we continue with the adventure. They have this whole fun adventure in the Invisible Hand.
Another
They
happy
sorry that they got cut off. What did you say?
I said another happy landing.
Oh yeah, another happy landing. General Grievous escaped again, of course, like a coward. And then we learn that Padme is pregnant, and Anakin is like, oh shit. Oh well, good. But he's like, he has this moment of hesitation where he's like, what the fuck do I say? And at this point, we only think it's one. Well, the implication is that it's only one baby. She has also Leia's hairstyle, which is kind of a cool foreshadow.
Yes.
And
it
then
looks good on her too. It was nice.
Yeah, well, everything does. Then we get Grievous talking to Sidious, and Sidious saying, "I'll have a new apprentice, much younger and more powerful." And it's like the end of Act 1, basically. We cut into this scene where Anakin and Padme are in the balcony. She's brushing her hair in the middle of the balcony, as you do, with like a violin in the background because John Williams, and we'll get to him later. Because we don't want to hijack the podcast just talking about John Williams again.
For the 5th
time. We get the great lines. You look so beautiful. Yeah.
Only because I'm so in love.
Yeah. No, exactly.
The love has blinded you?
That I like.
Well,
that
not
line.
exactly.
I like that line. The love has blinded you because it has. But like for the most, like that whole interaction, I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know what it means. Like I
that
literally
scene is a
don't
little weird.
don't
Like,
understand it. Yeah.
Watch the rest of the movie compared to that scene, And they must have done that like during a reshoot or when they weren't doing the rest of the film because she looked very different.
In what sense?
I don't know if they just threw too much makeup on her at that moment or what, but she looks very different in that scene with the hairbrush.
Mm, maybe it's because we're seeing it through Anakin's eyes, and he's like, it's supposed to be like a
I don't think
romantic.
that's why.
It's like in Star. Did you ever watch the old Star Trek show? Like whenever they do a close up of a female, it's because it's the '60s. They glowed it up so much and made it like super sparkly. You know,
Yeah, but she looks worse there than she does in the rest of the movie.
well, that's subjective.
All right,
But
well, we'll let our
so
listeners
yeah,
go back and watch the movie, and you watch that part where she has her hairbrush. She's brushing her hair. You tell me if she looks better or worse in that moment than in the rest of the movie. And I'm not saying that as like a mean thing towards her. I think Natalie
it
Portman is
sounds mean.
great.
Okay, I think she looks great in
She's
every scene.
beautiful woman.
Yeah, of course. Um, we so this is the one scene where we get a dash of episode 2 vibes with the romance, but then we get into the nightmare. We've seen a nightmare before. Well, not a nightmare, but a vision in. Well, we saw Anakin have a nightmare in episode 2, but I'm more referring to Luke in Empire when he sees the impending doom of his friends. And
Yeah.
this is the first time we see a visual representation of it. Like we actually go
We
into the
see the
vision.
vision because they really want to get the viewer into Anakin's head and need to make us understand
Literally into Anakin's head.
why he's going to betray everyone.
Yeah, and
We need to
it's a
see
great
it to feel
effect.
it.
It's a
Yeah.
great effect. It like gives us a view into the Force, and they use that same effect in the Clone Wars later on, in a
Mm-hmm.
couple episodes, a couple instances.
Yeah.
Um, and also a great moment when he wakes up from that nightmare and we see the robotic hand, and it's kind of like a cool reminder that like his everyday life is him having to deal with this,
Yeah.
but you kind of take it for granted as the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this moment when they talk about what just happened about the nightmare and set up the basically what the mission of the movie is, which is to save her for Anakin. We also get reintroduced to the Japur snippet, the little talisman or token or whatever
Yeah.
that he gave her as a kid. I always thought it was funny that they didn't bring that up into episode 2. That I feel like that would have been like a good hook into their
Yeah.
relationship.
I agree.
With if he like showed up as a teenager and she was still wearing it and
It
he'd
could
be
have made
like,
for great dialogue that led to their romance.
yeah,
But
exactly. It's
no,
like, oh, you
nope.
remember me.
Instead we get
Um,
some awkward ass scenes. I don't like sand.
but it's also funny because they reintroduce the Japur snippet as in Anakin telling her, like, I remember when I gave this to you, because they have to have the thing pay off at the end of the movie when we see it at her
Yeah.
funeral.
When we see it at her funeral.
But it's such a small touch of George in the storytelling. It's like
Mm-hmm.
introduce it in episode 1, skip it for movie, and then reintroduce it in episode 3 so you can have an emotional payoff at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of a cool thing. Also, Padme introduces the idea that Obi-Wan should help them, and he's like, we don't need his help. He's just already being a dick about it. Um, and if you've seen the Clone Wars as well, and I keep making references to the Clone Wars, but it's because it's great shit.
Anakin's kind of right. Like Obi-Wan was a huge dick to him the
No,
entire Clone
that
Wars.
wasn't what I was gonna say. There's a scene in the Clone Wars, and spoilers for people who don't want to know about the Clone Wars. Skip a couple of seconds. Um, in the last season, when Anakin is like sneaking around to talk to Padme in a hologram, and Obi-Wan is looking for him, and then
Oh yeah,
he
right.
like gets out of the room just in time for
Yeah.
Obi-Wan not to discover him, and he's like, "What? There's nothing going on here." And then as Anakin is walking away, Obi-Wan says, I hope you said Padme hi from me or whatever, something like that. And it shows that Obi-Wan knew about their relationship all along. He's not stupid,
Mm-hmm.
but and Anakin doesn't acknowledge it. He's too
Yeah.
stubborn or too proud to talk about the relationship, and it informs this line where he says, "We don't need his help." This is the one part of him that's without the Jedi Order. He wants something for himself, which is his home
Yeah,
life. We get this great scene with Yoda and Anakin where we learn about life and how that is a natural part of it. This is one of my favorite scenes. Tell the
I
truth,
agree.
because it's like truth bombs left and right. I love the attachment leads to jealousy.
His
Um,
entire that entire paragraph quote I is one of my favorites in all of Star Wars.
mm,
Um, Yoda talking about loss and how death is natural to life, and you need to let go of what you fear to lose,
yeah,
and you need to not be take ownership of that thing. If you love it, you need to be able to accept its loss and
yeah.
let things go. And I've sort of like taken that quote along with me throughout life and used it in these hard moments of my life where I feel like I can't let go of the things that I love, with death and relationships and everything with other humans,
Mm,
even pets. And I think it's a great quote that people should definitely read
mhm.
again.
The shadow of greed. That is. I love
Hmm.
that little moment, that little line.
Yep.
So it sounds so poetic.
But it
Um,
is cool that Anakin went to Yoda for guidance on this.
yeah, no, he's went straight to the source.
Anakin wholeheartedly cares and he wants to do the right thing,
Hmm.
but he's so afraid of losing her.
Yeah, I do wonder what Yoda came out of that meeting feeling like. Maybe he was like, what's up with this guy?
I mean,
Is
I
he about
think
to
he
be a
knew
school
that
shooter?
something serious was troubling Anakin. I think it's just like a shitty moment with everything else happening in the Clone Wars. It's like he couldn't really pay that much attention to it with everything else going on,
Yeah, maybe. But it's the
you know?
chosen one too.
But that's why Anakin would then turn to Palpatine for guidance, which
Yeah.
obviously was not a good thing.
And the Jedi, of course, are very suspicious of Palpatine. You know,
Yeah.
the whole thing about him still being in office long after his term has expired, because
Hmm.
of course Jar Jar gave him emergency powers, and the Senate asked him to stay. The
He's literally
Jedi,
Governor Cuomo in New York
yeah, exactly, and
with his emergency powers.
yeah, and it's interesting because this Jedi are is starting to become skeptical of what Palpatine's up to. They start to be very, you know, rest, worried about the whole situation. And it's interesting because they didn't show that worry earlier in the stories, in the earlier prequels. And I think it has to do with the
Yeah.
fact that Dooku just died and the war is seemingly ending. And now they have to deal with this
Hmm.
politician who has all this power, and uh, all these peacekeepers now are left to think like, dude, like should we like actually? They're afraid of the control that Palpatine has a hold of in the galaxy, and their
It's
fear, of
worked
course.
for the war, but
Mm,
they feel like, when are we going to do something about this? There's, the war is coming to a close. We need this guy to accept that the war's almost over. He needs to give up his power, but, what
yeah,
is he doing?
and of course, fear is a path to the dark side, and the Jedi are fearful of him in many ways. And I think that's part of the folly of the Jedi. Anakin gets, he gets put into the council, but not made a master, which is of course insulting because it's never been done in the history of the Jedi. And the reason he gets appointed, of course, is because they need him to spy on the Chancellor. Which, if you've been paying attention for the previous movies, they have a bond, they have a friendship. You know, he had looked out for him ever since he arrived there, which is great because it comes into play. He's meant to choose between the Jedi, who are like this dogmatic group of emotionless monks at a time when and this other guy, this great mentor father figure, which he never had, who's telling him to go with his emotions at a time when he's so emotionally disturbed.
Yep.
It makes so much sense that he followed that guy's advice instead of the
Yeah.
the motionless monks. Um, and he of course recognized that it was treason, that it was illegal, what they were asking of him. But
Yeah.
Obi-Wan's thing was like, "This is war, Anakin," which of course is a cop out.
It really is. I mean, if
Yeah,
this was real life,
yeah.
that
Uh,
line wouldn't go well.
the Jedi worried about it. Now they're like thinking about the prophecy. Is it true? Is it not? Um, Obi-Wan says he will not let me down. He never has, which is also another great, sweet, dramatic irony um, moment.
As it would turn out, he would let you down.
Exactly, exactly. It's like you can hear the Larry David music about to
Yeah.
yeah curb your prophecy. um, Anakin and Padme. So they're talking politics, and it's just an interesting moment when Padme brings up the fact that, have you ever considered that we may be on the wrong side? Everything around them is
Hmm.
suggesting they're becoming more and more like the Empire. But it's interesting
You're
that we don't
starting to sound like a separatist.
exactly. It's interesting we don't see if you've seen the deleted scenes for this movie, you can see that where Padme's ideas start coming from, because there's this whole group in the Senate that are thinking the same thing we've just been talking about, how Palpatine has been amassing too much power, and how they're attempting
Yeah.
to balance it out and have him like recognize that the war, not only that the war is coming to an end, but that he should also like give up his emergency powers. And I think that they're called the Petition of 2000, which is like 2000 signatures that they got in order to like present it to Palpatine to say that
Hmm.
he must bring a diplomatic end to the war really soon. So that's where Padme's point of view comes from the deleted scenes that are not in the movie, which I think are worth looking at. Mon Mothma is in there,
Yeah.
which she appears in Return of the Jedi and
I was just
Rogue
gonna say
One.
that. Yeah, there's some really good deleted scenes in this.
The seats of the rebellion, basically, because a lot of the leaders of the rebellion are
Hmm.
in those scenes. Um, and of course, they're politically, Anakin and Padme are very separate, which starts to create the divide between them. In the idea that at some point later in the movie they'll be able to be complete opposites, because he goes down a path she can't follow. Um, then we get the great opera scene.
Probably the best part in the movie.
I always find it's not weird, but I think it's funny that the scene starts with Anakin running. Like
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
probably summoned. Like I always thought that he fell asleep, like
Hmm.
after the time he was supposed to meet him, and that's why
Right.
he's
Yeah.
running.
It's late.
He's like, "You summoned me."
And
Uh,
George Lucas and his daughter are in that scene.
yes, Baron
That's a
Papanoida
Yep. That's a huge thing. That's just
from
on
they
the side.
are Pantorans from the planet of Pantora. They also
Hmm.
appear in the Clone Wars, which is a great in the Clone Wars, in that episode that he's in. So George's real life daughter also plays Baron Papanoide's daughter in the movie, which George plays Baron Papanoide, and in the show, in the Clone Wars, she gets kidnapped, and he's looking for his daughter. So it's a cool moment
Yeah.
when George Lucas is looking for his kidnapped daughter. He made a TV show where he has to rescue his kidnapped daughter, which is kind of funny. I would have
Yeah.
loved for George to have done the voice
But all right.
in the show, but I don't.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Yeah. Anyway,
Darth Plagueis the motherfucking wise.
it's not the story the Jedi would tell you. What do you think of that? The legend.
Another great memeable moment. It's actually become one of the copy pastas where people literally will take this entire quote of "Did you hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" And they literally tell the entire story inside a comment section.
Yeah. Well, I always love when there's mythology inside my mythology. When there's a story inside the story where they kind of flesh out the universe in some
Hmm.
sense. And of course, the fact that he's telling the story of Darth Plagueis, and he's like, "Oh, the Jedi won't tell you that story. The Jedi don't talk about that shit. The Jedi don't know the story because this is like a first-hand account."
Yeah,
And he's acting
literally.
like it's like a private, like privileged information that the Jedi are hiding from him because
It's a
he's always
Sith
trying to
legend, but
shit on
there are
them.
only 2 Sith ever, so he's the
Yeah,
only one who has the legend.
yeah. Uh, and we get introduced to the idea of using the midichlorians to create life. Now, many theories have popped out of this scene where they say, did Plagueis or Palpatine create Anakin? Because we hear in episode 1 that
Do
he
you
was
think they
conceived by the
did?
midichlorians. My take on it is no, they didn't. I don't think they did.
I
It,
agree.
it could be retcon into being so, and I think it could work. But as it stands, I think it was the will of the Force. It would have been cool. It would have been
I agree.
extremely ironic and like close looped that the Sith were the architect of their own destruction, where they tried to create life, and by doing so, they created their biggest enemy and their downfall.
Yeah.
That could be that's a cool concept, but
Yep.
I don't think they did.
I don't know. I like the idea that the Force itself did create Anakin based on the prophecy that he was the one to bring balance to the Force, and as we know, he does do that in the end.
Yeah, and based on this line, this kind of setup, as it were, they reintroduced Palpatine in Episode 9. They actually quote this line in Episode 9, and this is how they try to justify
Because
him being
and
alive.
it's horrible that if they wanted to bring back Palpatine, they could have done it in a very interesting way, but they didn't give us any explanation except for that the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
I
And
do
that's it.
agree.
That's all we got.
Yeah, I do agree. It's lame that we didn't get like a proper explanation moment.
We deserved some fucking answers, especially after Snoke. This whole time was just fucking nothing.
Well, it's all in the ancillary material, which it shouldn't have been. It should have been in the movie. But what the explanation that we do get in the ancillary material, I think it's in keeping with what was set up in the prequels, which is that he was cloning, and that's a cool concept. I wish they
We'll
would have.
talk about that when we get to the sequels. But
Yeah, but I think it's worth talking about in relation to the prequels, in the sense that Palpatine started to experiment with midichlorians and creating life, and even the fact that he got a clone army. It's like maybe him like testing the waters.
yeah.
That maybe that shit could be done in the future,
Mm-hmm.
but who knows? Maybe that's all
Yeah.
shit I'm trying to justify. But we get that great scene. Anakin gets told that maybe the Jedi aren't as great as he thought, and then maybe he's like, I don't know what to say. Um, and this power of being able to save the people you love, you can learn it not from you can learn it from Jedi. I was trying to do the quote, but I fucked it up. Um, and
Not from a Jedi.
there you go. And then we wiped Kashyyyk. Um, we get some sweet Wookiee action, which sounds sexier than I meant it. And Yoda's over there with the Wookiees. Yeah, we get Chewie in the background. We don't really see him named until later. But I think it's cool that we get the Wookiees in there. It was always something that we heard about as kids. The idea of Kashyyyk and the Wookiee planet. In the holiday special, it was there, which is fucked up.
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
Another valid meme.
Another amazing meme.
Yeah. Then we get the goodbye between Obi and Anakin, and they talk about how he's training since he was a small boy. Clearly, like it's so clear that it's like, oh, they're not gonna be friends again, are they? They're recapping their whole friendship in that scene, and you're
It's
like,
still a sweet moment.
no, it is, it absolutely is. But you can tell that this is good. He literally says, "Goodbye, old friend."
Yeah.
They're never gonna see each other again as friends.
Mm-hmm.
I also love this moment when we see Commander Cody and Obi-Wan talk about how they have fun banter, which speaks to the idea that the clones and the Jedi have grown very close in the interim between the
And he,
beginning of
he
the Clone
says
Wars.
to Obi-Wan, "Have I ever let you down?" Like,
Yeah, Like, yeah,
About
and I love
to.
that the burden is on me not to destroy all the droids before you arrive.
Yeah.
That's a great line,
Yeah.
great banter. Um, but it also makes it more tragic when he betrays Obi-Wan. I mean,
Hmm.
he's genetically inclined to do so, but still,
Which we don't know about in this show or
until
in the
this new
movie.
show.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. In the Clone Wars, they explain it more in depth.
Yeah.
Um, we get another scene where Anakin gets a second nightmare, and he sees he sees Obi-Wan in this nightmare that he's like consoling Padme as she's giving birth,
Hmm.
and he's like, Obi-Wan has been here, hasn't he? Uh, it's a moment of jealousy. It looks like where he's like, what like are they hanging out while I'm not around? Like, what's going on? Um, and it makes I think it pushes him all closer to the thing. And he says at the end of that scene, "I won't lose you." He's like, "I promise you,"
Yeah.
or something to that effect. You won't die in childbirth, which is of
Hmm.
course also playing on the idea that he lost his mother, and it's the whole thing is happening again. And he promised his mother that he wouldn't fail again. He actually says later in the movie, "I won't lose you the same way I lost my mother." Uh,
Yeah.
he says it twice at the beginning and at the end. We get to Utapau, which is where Grievous is. We get the great lizard thing. Yeah. I just imagine Ewan McGregor like in a green box, like
Yeah. Yeah.
pretending
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
to do the thing.
I love that lizard thing though.
No, absolutely. Um, we get hello there, General
Can we?
Kenobi.
Yeah. All right. I will say, of all the memes, of all of them, only one can reign supreme, and that one is, of course, hello there. And
Mm.
anytime now, if someone says hello there on the internet, or you see things of like girls saying hello there on Tinder, the automatic reply that you have to say is in all caps, General Kenobi.
It's part of
And
the
if you
law.
don't do that, then you failed immensely.
You have
So the
failed.
great thing is, like, my favorite thing of all with that is you'll get like some celebrity posting like an Instagram picture of them, and their caption is hello there, and then just a million random comments all say General Kenobi. It floods the entire comment. So
They never saw it
it's
coming.
just great to see how popular this thing has become.
It's so funny that I just imagine like some celebrity innocently putting hello there, and they don't even know,
I know.
and then just the bombardment starts. I gotta love prequel memes. Our prequel
uh,
memes. That's a great subreddit. Please go there and
yes, go on that
subscribe.
subreddit. It's amazing.
Um. So yeah, so he's confronting General Grievous. Another line that doesn't hold up in context with the show, with the Clone Wars, is you like fool. I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku. And he's like, you, dude,
You
like,
fool!
yeah, they fought
It's like, oh, you
several
mean the
times.
Jedi or the Sith dude we just killed?
Yeah, yeah. Not only that, but the idea that they fought several. It's like him just saying it for the audience benefit, because at that point, Obi-Wan and
Yeah, I know.
Grievous
Yeah,
have fought many, many, many times. But of course, in the grand scheme of the movies, only we had never seen them before, so he has to
well,
say that.
they wrote Anakin in the Clone War series to never have faced Grievous,
Another,
so that
yeah,
they can have that introduction in Episode 3 that they
and
have.
that's another crazy. If you watch that show, there are so many weird ways where they have to justify them not meeting. There was at one point when Anakin gets kidnapped in once by the Separatists and Grievous gets taken by the Republic, and they
Yeah.
have to swap them, but
Yep.
Anakin is unconscious, so they never technically meet. It's so fucking goofy. That one was probably like the biggest stretch and like the biggest ploy they had to pull.
I
It's like
love it.
a Weekend Bernie's type shit.
I love it.
Um, um, the Jedi are all worried that the Chancellor is up to no good. We have that scene where they're all around in a holographic message that I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. Anakin gets sent to speak to the Chancellor to tell him that Kenobi has engaged General Grievous in order to see his reaction. I bring this in up because it's in Clone Wars as well. For people who don't know, people who haven't seen Clone Wars,
Yes.
that you don't want to know this little bit, even though it doesn't spoil much. We see this scene because it's a hologram scene. Is like Windu talking to a bunch of holograms. We see this scene from a different person's point of view. So one of the holograms is talking to the, you know, to the council, and we see that scene, and then we see what happens after that scene. And I thought that was such a neat, like crisp way of connecting the story. Like that was so cool. And I just thought,
Yeah, they picked a good point in time to throw in that little tie into episode 3.
and it's a
Just to
great,
show us where in the story that we are.
it's a great tie-in too. It's like such a clever way to do it. I like,
Yes.
it's great that
Hmm.
they thought of that. Um, there's this great scene that I always thought is great, and I keep saying great scenes because like a lot of them are really good in this movie. It's not like in episode 2 where you have to like skip through the shitty parts. Um, when we see the Anakin looking at the window and Padme looking at the window, and John Williams is doing his thing, and it's
There we
amazing.
go. It is really excellent there.
And they're looking at each other across the city or whatever,
Mhm.
and there's a tear streaming down Anakin's face, and it's super fucking dramatic, and you hear the choir in the background.
Because that's literally the moment, that's
That's when he
when he
decides
decides.
that he's gonna go there and do
Yeah.
something. Also, we see like we hear Palpatine in the background. You do know, don't you? He's like poking him with his. I always wonder about that. Is he telepathically talking to him, or is he remembering some
No,
unseen
I think
conversation?
he's just remembering it.
That's what I wonder. That I wonder that if maybe Palpatine is just like whispering like via the Force. He's like, you do know.
I'm every voice you have ever heard
Exactly.
inside your.
We know he can do that shit. I mean, it's Palpatine. He can do basically anything. I don't know. It's open to interpretation. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not. Um. So Mace and the council, or some members of the council, some useless members of the council, show up to to arrest the chancellor, but they can't because as he says, I am the Senate. Another great meme.
They say the Senate will decide your fate, and he says, "I am the Senate." Another great, great meme.
Not yet.
And then, of course, Mace, his ultimate enemy, is just like, "Not yet."
So can we talk about the Jedi's
And
getting cloned
we get,
by by
yeah,
sheep?
yeah. I was just gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
So the most popular one of all of them, aside from Mace Windu, is of course Kit Fisto,
In that
who
lineup, yeah.
was basically just an extra in episode 2, and he's now in this one again, and he lasts the longest out of the other Jedi, but still falls within seconds essentially. But we see him in the Clone Wars series, and he's doing a lot of badass shit, and he's
Yeah.
got this Jamaican accent, and he's really cool, and it's like it's just weird to see him go out in such a punk bitch way.
Not even him. All of them. There are supposed to be like Jedi masters. They sit around in the fucking council, and they're all.
But why? All right. Here's the thing: if you have a council, and not just a council, you have a How many Jedi were there? 10,000, I think.
Yeah, 10,000.
You have 10,000 Jedi, who might be out fighting wars and
They're
battles
all
and shit.
out. Yeah, they're all.
There's at least hundreds in the Jedi Temple. Why not bring like 30 or 40 or 50 into that room? There is no fucking way in hell Palpatine could have walked out of there.
Well, they're arrogant. The Jedi
Instead, he
are.
brought 3 dudes. He brought 3 dudes.
Yeah, but think about. So here's the thing. Anakin comes to Mace Windu to say, "I just learned the terrible truth." But just before he does that, Mace tells him, "Like we're just about to go to tell the Chancellor to give up his emergency powers." So they're already on their way to see him before they knew he was Sith Lord. Then he gets the information that he's a Sith Lord, and he's like, "Well, we're already gonna go for him anyway." And not only that, but Mace Windu is like the epitome of the arrogant Jedi.
Yeah.
So they were probably like, "Yo, we have three fucking Jedi's or four, I
I
think."
think he's a fucking dumbass.
Well, yeah, he died, and they were like, fuck it, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get him. And then the squad shows up, and like Sam Jackson is doing his badass look where he's like, like going through a like epic opening of a door, and
The door opens and you see them like in this coordinated like walk down the hallway.
yeah. And then he shows up and he just pulls out the lightsaber right away. He doesn't even he starts speaking after pulling out his lightsaber. He's like, "Fuck this shit. We're
Yeah.
done. You like war's over, bitch. Out." Uh, and then he starts killing all of them, and then he plays with Mace Windu for a while. That's not a great fight, to be honest. The choreography isn't that great. You can tell like the Ian McDermott didn't know what he was
A
doing.
lot of it is just CGI because Ian McDermott is not a swordsman at all, and he's a stage actor, and he didn't want to do any of that shit. And so a lot of that is like the most dated stuff in the
Mm.
prequels, where you see this really crappy CGI of him in this fight, but like you just learn to accept it, and it's just like weird when you see the scenes of like him actually with the saber and making these motions, like he does that like jerking like
Oh
forward
yeah, he's
movement and he
making
makes
so
these
many
really
faces.
fucking weird faces. It's just it's comical. Like this guy is supposed to be like an evil, super badass Sith Lord, and he's just this weird, quirky old man.
He's always been that too, though. He's always having so much fun. He's always hamming it up.
Yeah.
But in this scene in particular, especially later, no, 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 you will die.
The it's such a great quotable moment. Like, I mean, obviously all of the Emperor's lines are super quotable and like it's fun to imitate him. But in this scene especially with just yeah, like the no 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 and weak, too weak.
I remember Ian McDermott said in some celebration or something that when he was shooting that scene, George was telling him to go bigger, to be more exaggerated. And he was like, "Yo, I'm a working actor. I can't like what the fuck you like." He wanted him to go like full ham, and he was like, "Dude, okay, whatever you say, dude, but I don't know." So that's how you got all those.
And I'm
Like,
thankful for it because I fucking love it.
well, he's like the ultimate bad guy, so you need to have those moments of
Yeah.
like complete like he's like a mustache twirling villain at that point
Hmm.
where he's just like no. um so Anakin betrays the Jedi, whatever. uh,
Whatever. All right.
no,
Perfect.
it's a great moment. The electricity starts happening. Palpatine, at this point we see him transform into the shriveled uh syphilis looking dude that he was in
Which
the.
is it's crazy that at no point in time does Palpatine just like look in a mirror or anything and just go like, "Yo, my face is fucked."
Well, he does bring it up in the Senate later when he's like, the attempt on my life has left me scarred. So I
Yeah,
think it
this attempt on
helps.
my life has left me scarred and deformed. Yeah, but
It helps him sell the
I
idea
think
that the Jedi have become
like he
traitors, I think.
wanted to use that obviously towards his favor, but he didn't seem to care about it. All he cares about is that unlimited power.
Well, that's another thing. People often talk about, was he like, people thought before that he thought maybe that was his real face. That was a theory that the real face of Palpatine is the fucked up Emperor face,
Hmm.
and that this whole time he was just uh, like using the Force to wear a guise or something. That this is the moment he reveals his true self, which I think that part is true, but in a like a metaphorical sense.
I mean, I
But
think in like a metaphorical sense, yes, but I don't think that was his actual face. I think
like
is
at that point he
he just
becomes.
is such a Sith and only cares about power that he literally just doesn't give a fuck about his own appearance.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you see the expanded stuff, the books, whatever, the other shows, he doesn't come out like that in public. Like in public, he has a very curated image. Like people still think the Emperor
Yeah.
looks like he did before the accident.
And even in Star Wars Rebels, the scene with Ezra where
Yeah,
he's talking to him,
exactly.
he first appears as his clean cut, Chancellor Palpatine look.
That's how he appears to all the galaxy. He doesn't make any public
Yeah.
appearances usually. Um,
Mhm.
so you know, we get the moment of betrayal. He gets anointed Darth Vader. He has to save Padme's life. That's the only thing. It's also funny that he's like, I don't know this power, how to get it for sure, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. Um, that's kind of
Not even just that, but like I hate Anakin's lines in that scene for some reason. Like he just, God, he comes off as such a little bitch. Like how much he sucked. Like I get he's desperate and he wants to do whatever will save Padme, but like the way he just like it immediately coddles up to Palpatine and is like, "I will do whatever you ask and I'll follow all your teachings," and like all that. It's just so like, shut the fuck up, you little bitch.
it's like definitely like the most probably the most soap opera ish moment in Star Wars. Like aside from "I'm Your Father,"
It's one of
um,
them.
because it's
Yeah.
so melodramatic. But I think this is a thing. The turn of Anakin, I don't think it works in isolation. I don't think it works if you like rewatch Revenge of the Sith and you're like I'm gonna watch a Star Wars movie. I'm gonna watch Revenge of the Sith. I think the turn of Anakin works only if you have the whole prequel trilogy like in mind when you're watching it. If you watch the whole thing again or whatever, I think because I rewatched them recently for this,
Well,
and I think it helps a
you
lot when you put it in the context of the bigger picture of the whole tragedy. You
you
understand
really
it better.
need to see the loss of his mother, the loss of
Hmm.
Qui-Gon, his whole life has been loss and not having his own identity and everything taken from him or him being owned by someone.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So in that sense, I think it hits all the beats when it's a build up. When it's built up properly, which I think the three films do, but Revenge of the Sith alone doesn't. You know what I mean? I feel like it falls short in that sense. But not that it falls short.
Agreed.
That's what justifies the existence of
Yeah.
the first two movies. Um, so he raids the Jedi Temple.
Yep.
We get the great scene of Order 66, which is such an amazing scene, such a dramatic moment in the theaters. I remember it was like,
Them
fuck.
walking up to the Jedi Temple, all the clones and Anakin, and you just hear that marching theme of the clones. It's so fucking good.
Hmm. No, it is. And he has these evil get up. He has an evil hood. Um, and Obi-Wan gets betrayed by Cody because he has to execute Order 66. The time has come. I always like that line. I always wondered as a kid, like,
Yep.
did he talk to the clones like before the war began? And he was like, by the way, at the end of this, you're all like, it sounded to me like they were in cahoots before. The time has come. By the way, it's like, but I know
Yeah.
he
I
wasn't.
don't
He
know.
was just
I
an
mean,
evil.
I don't
It's
think he
just an
told
evil
them,
line.
but I think before we got the knowledge from the Clone Wars, that line was meant to show that the clones had a set of directives that they knew about, and that was one of them,
Hmm.
which could have been just like a proxy to use in case of a certain situation.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, the whole thing is
Palpatine saying like time has come is like this is the situation this directive was used for. We need to use it, and they don't question it because he's the ultimate. He's where they get their direct orders from.
well, we learn is the chip in their head, but the idea of Order
Yeah,
66. But what Order 66 means is the Jedi have become traitors to the Republic. That's
yeah.
that's the meaning of it. So that's why he's like,
Yeah.
okay, I know what to do then. You gotta kill them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this scene, we get a montage of a bunch of people in the galaxy. The John Williams music, and this scene in particular. Ah, fuck, it's so good. Um,
It sells it so well. Just the loss, the immense loss.
so much, and the that little moment when Yoda drops his cane and he is
Mm-hmm.
like going over, like touching his heart. Fucked up. And if you
I
watch,
love the Order 6016. You just see all these Jedi. come to have known, just getting shit on.
Yeah, and it takes special meaning when you watch the Clone Wars. Like Plo Koon it's a big character in the Clone Wars. He's like the one
Yeah,
who found Ahsoka,
flying the ship. Yeah.
and he gets killed in this, and it's like, oh no, Plo Koon.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
at the end of this sequence, we get Bail Organa. Bail Organa was introduced at the beginning of the movie very briefly, but now we start seeing him again in the story, and it's because, of course, you got to set up the idea of Leia, Leia's adoptive fathers, because at the end of the movie,
He was
you know.
shown in episode 2,
No, he was. I mean, he was reintroduced at the beginning of the movie. Is what I meant.
reintroduced in the movie. Yeah.
But he wasn't through most of it until the end of Order 66, when
Right.
the little kid starts taking out the clones. That little
Little
kid, of
Padawan
course,
starts fucking the clones up. You're like, yeah.
that kid is George Lucas's son, Jed Lucas.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, he killed his
I
own
didn't
son
know
in this
that.
movie. Yeah.
Well,
Mm. And that
went
kid,
out like a badass.
yeah, he did. He went out better than Kid Fisto and all the other schmucks.
He had the Mundy.
And like the Palpatine, the ones that Palpatine fucked over. But he was also in episode 2. That kid, that same Padawan in the library scene with Jocasta Nu. Remember, Jocasta Nu says like, if it's not in the archives, that it doesn't exist, and she walks
Yeah.
back to the background.
Was that actually him?
It's the same kid. Yeah,
Wow.
same character in theory. I don't
Wow.
remember the character's name right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so George Lucas killed his own kid in his movie. We see Anakin has to go kill the separatist in Mustafar. He tells Padme the whole thing, the whole situation. That's how she later knows that she has to go there. And another moment that I think is like probably one of the best moments of genius is my favorite moments in these movies are the intercutting, which I think they work so well. And
Mm-hmm.
there's the moment when Obi-Wan and Yoda go to Coruscant, to the Jedi Temple, to override the code in order to warn Jedi to stay away. And we see this great moment between the Senate and Anakin killing all the separatists and them infiltrating the temple.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 3 different sequences going at the same time. And as he's declaring the creation of the Empire, Yoda and Obi-Wan are realizing the death of the Jedi, and they're like, and you see the guy who's behind all of it, which is Vader, who enabled it. And I love that little moment when they see the dead younglings, and Obi-Wan is like, "Who could have done this?" And then they cut to Anakin, and the choir is like, "Oh, so good."
My one problem with that part though
Fuck
is,
you.
do you not know what I'm about to
No,
say?
I'm kidding. Yeah, go ahead.
So they immediately Obi-Wan like, I think this was like there was some deleted scenes prior, or something that like doesn't link up now with the final cut, where Obi-Wan immediately refers to the Palpatine as the Emperor, which, how does he know that he declared it as an empire? He doesn't. And how do they know it's Darth Vader? Like, I know he declares him there, but we don't really see much of anything.
In the hologram. In the hologram.
I know we see him like declare it, but like I can't remember if we get the full name. Do we get him saying Darth?
It's Lord Vader, which in Sith,
Yeah,
he's a Sith Lord. You know, it's
you're not always. It's not always Darth. There was Count Dooku.
He was Darth Tyrannus.
Yeah, but
he was.
Fuck it. Yeah.
No.
But
so
then
what you're saying isn't valid, and also Palpatine in that hologram says, "Now, Lord Vader, go and bring peace to the Empire." So that's how they knew he was an emperor. Remember that?
Yes, I do. Hold on. There's one other thing in that moment, though. I'm trying to like recollect that whole moment. There was
no,
one.
But I do agree. It's kind of weird that they say it so fast after learning it.
Yeah, it's like they're not used to this transition. They don't know.
He should have said Chancellor. I don't think it's probably in the tracking of the story. They probably hadn't figured out that it was.
Yeah.
It's probably not that smooth, but but it's a great scene. Um, this is how liberty dies with thunderous applause. I love that line. That's probably the lines that encapsulates a lot of what the prequels are about. Because the prequels are about two things: the death of Anakin in a metaphorical sense, and the death of democracy. Um, and both things are like shown in this moment, and the death of the Jedi, of course, just death in general.
Yeah.
um, I love that scene when Obi-Wan goes to Padme. When he's like, try to find it. Yoda says, "We must destroy the Sith. You're not strong enough for Sidious, so you gotta go for Anakin." And he's like, "I don't know where he is." And he's like, "Use your feelings and you will find him." And the first thing he does, of course, is go to Padme because he knows very implicitly, because he never says it, that they have a relationship. And
Yeah.
this is also another. They're all great, but in this scene, John Williams hits it out of the park. This is like a classic soap opera scene, where you're told that the some evil twin or something. It's like you get told the plot in a very melodramatic sense. He literally goes to a housewife, I think, at that point. Well, she's a senator, but my meaning. Um, that moment when he says Anakin has turned to the dark side, and the
Mm-hmm.
music kicks in, and she's like, "You're gonna kill him, aren't you?" And he's like, "He's becoming very great." Everything just keeps going worse, and it's so tragic, and it's so fucked. And it crescendos to this moment when we transition back to Mustafar, where Anakin is looking at a balcony, and we cut to all these people he's killed lying on the floor, and he's
Mm-hmm.
looking at the sun. This sun, like in the middle of all the fog and the mist, of course, representing the light within him is dwindling. um, and he has a cheek. He has a cheek. Of course, he does. He has a tear down his cheek, which I think is great because it still shows his conflicted emotions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
also, love Anakin is the father, isn't he? That line that not only, uh, and he's not surprised. He's like, yeah, I kind of figured. Also shows that people kind of started realizing that Padme was indeed pregnant.
Yeah.
Um, and then we go to Mustafar. What do you think of the fight in Mustafar? Well, before the fight, the scene when Padme and Anakin confront each other, the
I
preamble
love
to the
that
fight.
scene. I think it's one of the most quotable moments in all of the movie, and I love like as it's happening, just like mouthing all of the lines, just between Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan, just like trying to like the little back and forth between them, and Anakin's like rage when he sees Obi-Wan. Liar! You're with him. You brought him here to kill me. You have done that yourself. And just all these lines are just so great, and Anakin just getting more and more like fast paced and angry. You will not take her from me.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh, it's so good. I just love it.
It's also, I think it's fucked up, um, that he chokes her.
Yeah,
Her being the object of desire throughout the whole movie, which I do think it's something to say about Padme having a very reduced role in this movie. She doesn't have a lot to do in the story. She doesn't have a lot of agency, but I think it's appropriate because this movie is through the eyes of a villain or somebody who becomes a villain, a tragic figure, and he doesn't see
yeah,
her as a person with her own agency. He
yes,
sees her as the object he needs to have or save, whatever.
100% agree, and that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, and this thing that he's been trying to get throughout the whole movie, now he feels such a possession to it that he feels that it's okay for him to choke her because he owns her. You know,
Yeah,
it's a very submissive. It's a very like dominating thing. Um,
mm-hmm.
and it's a poor Padme. She didn't see any of this coming, although she should have when he killed a bunch of children, and women and sand people.
Not just the men,
Yeah,
but the women
exactly.
and the children too.
Yeah, nobody was safe.
And of course her reaction to that was just, to be angry is to be human.
Yeah, well, we already talked about that, and it's
That's where you're wrong, kiddo.
um, I love. I will do what I must. Obi-Wan says, "I will do what I must," and he turns on his lightsaber, and that shot of Obi-Wan taking out his lightsaber and like turning it
Yeah.
on behind him, and behind him is the sun, because he's the good guy in this situation. And then the Battle of the Heroes kicks in, and shit goes fucking
Well, hold
crazy.
on. Before
Mhm.
we get into the Battle of the Heroes, Obi-Wan says only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Yes.
Saying that is an absolute statement.
Hmm.
So, is Obi-Wan a Sith?
I
Or is he
think
just a contradictory motherfucker?
I think like many Jedi at that time, he was a hypocrite.
Because he didn't try to see things from Anakin's point of view and try to like help him that way.
Right. Well, I think Anakin was pretty far gone at this
He
point.
felt like he was too far gone to where he didn't care. Like, but he's his brother and he loved him. So, you know, at least personally, I would do everything I could to like be in denial that there's like no turning back for him. Like I would try to turn him back as much as I could.
Well, it also it reminds me of this line in Return of the Jedi, when Luke is trying to convince Vader that maybe there's still good in him. Vader says, Obi-Wan once thought as you did. We've talked about this a little bit. It is not shown in
Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith is going there to kill
Yeah,
him.
it's really not.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's pretty clear right away. But also, the first thing he sees him do is choke the woman, his pregnant wife. So maybe he's like, yeah, I don't think this
Yeah.
guy wants to talk. um, so just devil's advocate. Um, so so yeah, fight goes ape shit. This is the best fight in Star Wars. Well, Duel of the Fates is great, but this is like probably the best, the fastest
The
paced.
choreography
The
is
choreography is
just
insane,
fucking incredible.
and there are mirrors of
The
each
way they
other.
practiced for months and months and months of doing this, like
Hmm.
they themselves decided to do this. They didn't have the
Yeah,
stunt doubles do this. They practiced the sword
real
fighting
actors.
themselves, and they became experts at it. And it's just insane how fast paced this fight is. It's incredible how they pulled this off.
It's extremely epic. Extremely epic. Um, Also, I want to talk about Mustafar is basically hell in a metaphorical sense. They go to hell in this movie. This is where he meets,
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's descended, a fallen angel, if you will, because he's supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
the chosen one. Um,
Yeah.
and they fight heavily and fiercely in this movie, in this sequence. Um, this is another great moment of intercutting, where we see the fight of the brothers, as it were, in hell, and then we see the fight between the ultimate good guy versus the ultimate bad guy, which it's
Yep.
probably so. This is probably my favorite fight in the movie. I gotta confess, it makes me so giddy every time I watch it, more so than the Battle of the Heroes, because it's like something you out of a dream. As when I was a Star Wars fan as a kid, I was like, how fucking sick it would be to see Darth Sidious versus Yoda, like the two most powerful characters in the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's a little short lived.
And I was relieved. I was relieved how like it wasn't as cheesy as the Yoda fight, like just flipping around like an idiot in
How
episode
dare you?
2. Like this was much better presented. And the great thing that like you watch it every time, you're like, oh, like just imagine if this turned out differently. Like Yoda basically had him. Like I think Yoda won that fight, but
I think the opposite.
circumstances led to him like failing.
I think Yoda didn't have that fight. I think
I don't know,
Sidious
man.
was no. I think he wasn't ready for Sidious. I mean, he's throwing fucking Senate pots at him. Uh, and he's like, he has to run around, and like everything he's doing, he's like he doesn't have the upper hand. Uh, he shoots lightning at him, then his lightsaber drops. Like the first thing he does is shoot lightning at him,
I
and he
felt
wasn't
like
able to.
Yoda had a good counter for everything, but he just, based on the environment, he wasn't able to accomplish his mission and he failed. And then, of course, this leads us to him declaring that he has to go into exile. But, like,
Yeah.
why not just try again? Failure is the greatest teacher of all, right, Yoda? So what are you doing, man?
Well, what if he tries again and then Sidious, like he wasn't? I don't think he was ready for Sidious, and I think it shows in the movie. What if he does it again and then he gets killed, and maybe, as far as he knows, maybe Obi-Wan got killed, and then that's the end of the Jedi. I think at that point he's like, you gotta split the different. That you gotta, you know, just try to save the Jedi Order at this point.
Yeah,
Um, and the reason why I bring this fight is because the intercutting is also great.
intercutting is amazing.
Between one of them, and we also get a dash of what do you call them? Duel of the Fates, the song,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great reprisal.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to bring up in this section, which I think it's worth bringing out, there's a lot of metaphors, visual metaphors going on in this part. If you see Mustafar, it's like a mining planet, because you see in earlier scenes like people mining in the lava and shit. Um, and when they're fighting in the lava as well, there are droids that are trying to pick up minerals and shit in the lava, and they're like, "What the fuck
Yeah.
are these people doing? Let's get out of here."
Mm-hmm.
It's like a commercial, like a planet of commerce, and
Right.
um, when they're fucking shit up in the control room, and that little arm is going off into the lava, and they're all like they're fucking shit up, like this factory up or whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's basically representing the death of free trade, because they're becoming an empire, they're becoming a tyranny. And in the other side, in the other battle, it's them fighting in the Senate chamber, which is basically them fighting for democracy, you know,
Yeah.
for at later on in episode 4, Palpatine was able to dismantle the Senate, and in that way complete his hook onto the galaxy.
Yeah.
But I just want to bring that up because I think it's a great visual metaphor
Good
of
analogy.
the death of the Republic in every sense,
Mm-hmm.
and the birth of the Empire.
Yeah.
But that fight goes on for 45 minutes, and at the end, you get what you get. You get hands and legs
It's
getting
over,
cut off.
Anakin. I have the high ground.
I always
You
thought
underestimate my power.
I always thought as a kid it was fucked up when he burst into flames,
Why?
because it looks fucking gnarly.
Thought it was great.
No, I think it's great. I think it's great. Don't get me wrong. But as a 9-year-old, I was like, "Oh shit! This is like the most intense Star Wars been up to. This is the only Star Wars film up to that point that been PG-13. I think it has to do with this scene where he gets burned alive.
I mean, I was more concerned with the killing of the younglings, and that was pretty gnarly for a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, but they don't show it.
Yeah,
They
but
they
it was
imply.
pretty fucking heavily alluded to.
No, it's obviously what they're trying to allude, but they don't show him like. Well, they do a little bit in the hologram when he's like choking
Yeah.
some kid, and then he's like killing another.
Do you ever see that like VR game where you can like reenact Anakin in that fucking room and you just chop up a bunch of little fucking
No.
like
No, I never done
dude,
that. I know there's a
YouTube
VR
it. It's
Star Wars which I did,
hilarious.
but it wasn't. It wasn't that.
It
That's
is
fucked up.
fucking hilarious. Watch it.
I have to. Yeah, I have to look it up now.
Watch it. It's
Uh,
hilarious. Because the kids are like little adults, they're just like miniature. It's hilarious. They're just like jumping and running around all over the place, and Anakin's just slicing and dicing.
did you see the Robot Chicken sketch about this part? You see the Robot Chicken
Yeah,
sketches of Star Wars where
where he's like cutting like dandelions and
yeah,
shit.
daisies and shit, and then he's like, "Padme, I brought you some daisies," and then she looks like it's in the dinner table. He's like, "Oh my god, that's so cute!" And she's like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think the heavier reason for the PG-13 rating is the bursting into flames. They actually show that. and I had a similar reaction to Obi-Wan when I was 9, where I had to kind of look away. Um, but I do love. This is probably Hugh McGregor's best acting in the trilogy, when he's like doing his whole "You were the chosen one"
Oh
speech. We were brothers. You fucked it up. What the fuck? Um, and
Mm-hmm.
with all this wrapping up, we get to the birth of Vader and the twins. Another moment of great intercutting, when two things are happening that are basically the same
Mm-hmm.
thing happening in two different places. Um, with the
Well,
uh
also with that is you have not just the twins being born, but you have the death of Padme and the birth of Darth Vader coinciding.
right, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
her death and his birth. Um,
Yeah.
I love this scene as well. They discover she's gonna have twins right away. The only thing that I was
Mm-hmm.
always I thought it was kind of dumb, but I kind of like now, and I think it's poetic, is the idea that she had lost the will to live, and that's why she was dying. Um, but I mean, I get it.
Honestly, if you like, I know this scene gets a lot of shit, and like her as a character gets a lot of shit for dying of a broken heart. But if you just look at statistics of, you know, death during childbirth, um, it's actually a pretty staunch number. And obviously, this is done in a fictional universe, but that idea remains the same. And, she was not only wounded, but she also was just super weak. And that that idea of her being heartbroken is like when her body is in this extremely vital stage where it's depending on her to carry on, like she has no will to live, so it's like why would her body want to fight to survive this pregnancy?
Well, the droid said technically, like medically, she's completely healthy, so I don't think she's wounded. Like she got choked up a little bit,
She
but
got
that's
choked the fuck out, but like
yeah. But the droid knows
why
best.
was she passed out the whole time though?
Yeah,
You know?
she got choked and she's pregnant. I don't know. Yeah, I get
I'm
it. I mean,
confused.
I
I'm
think
not a
it's
fucking
fine.
doctor.
Yeah, the Dr. Ball. That's another.
Ooba, ooba, ooba.
Iseta oeba. Um, but I love the intercutting. We get the birth of Luke and Leia. She names them on the spot. I always like to think that she had at some point figured out, like, if it's a boy, I'm gonna call him Luke, and if it's a girl, I'm gonna call her Leia, and then she
Yes.
got to use
Yeah.
both. Because
Yeah.
people always say like, "Oh, she's good at making shit on the spot." And it's like, no, no, no. People
Like,
figure this shit
no,
out
she
before the
definitely
birth.
thought about this beforehand.
Yeah. Um. We Vader gets put into his Frankenstein costume. Um. And I love the first breath. That's a great moment.
Yes. Well, the little like
Chilling.
whistle too of like the
Yeah.
the mask being put
Everything
on
leading
him.
up to it.
Yeah. Oh, that scene is just terrific.
The first breath, not only the sound, but the mist in front of his mask moving. Oh,
I get chills every time,
me
but
too.
especially that first time as a kid in theaters. Like I was in fifth grade at the
Hmm.
time,
Hmm.
and no, not fifth grade. I'm sorry, it was '05. I was in eighth grade, and
Hmm.
I saw it with my friends, and that was just was such an epic moment.
Yeah, no, completely. And following it right up, it's one of the moments that to me connects the third movie of the prequel trilogy a lot to the third movie of the originals, which is
Mm-hmm.
Padme's declaration that they're still good in him. Those are her
Yeah.
dying words. They're still
Mm-hmm.
good in him. I know it. She shows to him the compassion that Obi-Wan failed to show him.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan went there to kill him, and even though she got choked up by him, she was still a believer. They're still good in him. And
Mm-hmm.
that idea that echoes in Star Wars a lot, and it echoes in Luke's sentiment later in
Yeah.
the original trilogy. She called it.
Mm-hmm.
Padme called it before, like 30 years before it happened or whatever.
Padme and Luke are the only people to not have given up on Vader and Anakin.
Yeah, I do wonder where Luke learned that compassion. I mean, what it must have been from his aunt and uncle, because everyone around him would tell him to kill him.
I mean, I just think that he grew up with so much hope. And you think of him looking out at the twin sons, and he's just always been such a hopeful person that he remains positive. And he loses his aunt and uncle, who are the only people who he has ever grown to know and cares about. He loses Obi-Wan. He loses everything. He loses his home, his future. He doesn't know how he's going to become a Jedi. And he finally gets this father announced to him, and he refuses to give up on him. He says that even though you're the most evil person in the universe, like, you're my father, and I'm not going to hate, I'm going to love.
Yeah, but that reflection of Padme's sentiment in Luke is really beautiful, and it's not shared by Leia. I mean, it is later in the sequels, but in the context of the original trilogy, even though she's the female and the women are supposed to be archetypically in mythological terms the one who show pity and compassion. Sorry. In this sense, it's
But she
Luke.
also didn't know that Vader was her father until it was to the point where she didn't even get an interaction with him as Vader, where she knew that he was her father.
True.
Which would have been very interesting.
Extremely interesting. But I like also that it's kind of unresolved. That the fact that she has to carry this trauma without it having like a moment of catharsis.
Yeah.
So we get all that wrapped up with the twins. They arrange for the twins to be sent. One of them, Leia, with Bail Organa, and Luke to his family in Tatooine. And until the time is right, disappear.
I gotta say, Leia lucked out on that deal.
Yeah.
One lives a life of luxury, one lives a life of extreme poverty on the worst planet ever.
Yeah, it's true. But I think that's part of what make Luke such an enduring character.
Yes.
Is the fact that he is humble. He's the ultimate, he's like Superman basically. He's the farmer from Kansas. Yeah. His greatest superpower is that it's not his power. It's his heart. Exactly. Yeah. Which Leia, of course, also has because she grew up in a political family, so she knows the importance of activism. But anyway, in that same scene, we also hear the idea that Qui-Gon Jinn might still be around, that he has learned the path to immortality. If you watch the Clone Wars, you know what Yoda's talking about there. But in the context of this movie, it's kind of like a tacked on.
The deleted scene.
Right, yeah.
The deleted scene in Episode 3 of Yoda speaking with Qui-Gon, who is in the netherworld of the Force.
So there's this scene. It would have
been really cool to see that play out in the movie.
For people who don't know, you can see the scene in Revenge of the Sith. The scene is still there, but you just don't.
It ties in where Yoda slowly turns around.
Yeah, when he's he has his eyes closed. It's
Bail Organa is standing there, and he says, "Obi-Wan Kenobi has made contact."
Exactly. That moment when Yoda has his eyes closed, he's communing with Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Or he was supposed to anyway in the an older version of the movie. Mm-hmm. That's a promise that I hope they fulfill with the Kenobi show. The idea that Qui-Gon teaches Obi-Wan how to
Liam Neeson said he's down to come back. So I am so praying that they fulfill that.
The prophecy of Liam Neeson's return.
He is the chosen one.
3PO's memory 3PO's memory gets wiped because you need to wipe it up before the original trilogy. R2 doesn't, by the way, which is weird. I do wonder why
R2 is the storyteller of the whole saga.
Exactly, he's the keeper of the.
Then again, R2 doesn't tell anyone anything; he just keeps it to himself.
Yeah, he's
and why doesn't Obi-Wan remember R2?
They retconned it in a book.
Bastard.
Yeah. They retconned it in one of the From a Certain Point of View books. Remember that book?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
retcon it so he like later like and when they were in the Falcon in some corner he was like, "It's good to see you, old friend," or some shit like that, in order to bridge that gap. It's always funny to me how the story group in Lucasfilm has to have they get all this fucking thing where they have to patch shit up later on. They're like, "What the fuck do we
Yeah,
do?
I know.
How does Leia remember her mother? I don't know. She saw her a painting of her."
Force. It was the Force.
Yeah, it was the Force. It was a feeling. Um, Padme's funeral is amazing. I love that. The music is great. The procession is so
Jar
somber
Jar
and
scene.
great. That's Jar Jar. Yeah, we get Jar Jar, a little bit of Jar Jar. I also love that she still has the baby bump because to
Yeah.
me it means that they're trying to cover up the fact that the twins were born. Because as far as the larger galaxy is concerned, especially Palpatine and Vader, um, she died before giving um, birth to her children.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to me that they have the baby bump. I think in some Vader comic, Vader goes back to her grave, which is very macabre.
Yes,
But
I've seen that. Yeah, he
but
goes to her mausoleum, her tomb.
but it's great. Uh,
Yeah.
we see a glimpse of Grand Moff Tarkin, which is sick. Uh,
Yes.
that's great. Also of the Death Star,
Mhm.
of course. Um,
Yeah, the beginnings of the
trying
Death Star.
to bridge everything between 3 and 4. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end, we get the twins getting set off. That moment when the Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru take Luke and look into the sunset. That's just you can't get any better than that as a Star Wars ending.
Exactly. It's the perfect way to tie it from one trilogy to the next.
Yeah, and I especially love Obi-Wan's pensive look when he's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, he looks around and he's like, okay. He walks back and he's
Yeah,
like,
he
I'll see you in
swirls
20
his
years.
hand on his beard,
Yeah,
puts his hood up, and this is the makings for the Obi-Wan show. It's gonna be amazing.
I feel like the Obi-Wan show is gonna be such a great follow-up after watching Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I'm just terrified of. I really don't want them to duel. I don't want another Anakin
Oh
versus Obi-Wan confrontation until episode 4.
no, I know it's gonna be
Unless it's
like a
like
mind thing. It's
a
gonna be a mind
mind
thing.
thing. I
It is.
hope to God.
I think
You don't
it
know
would.
that.
I think it will be, and I think it'll be all the better for it because it's more interesting that way for them to like a mind connection.
I fucking hope so.
But yeah, dude, Revenge of the Sith, the last Star Wars movie.
Excellent, excellent movie. Yeah, the quote unquote last Star Wars movie.
Right.
It was it's a great movie to rewatch, and like I said, it's probably, if not my favorite, then close second at this point. I just everything about it is great to me,
Only a
and
Sith deals in absolutes.
we would love to hear what you guys think. Please let us know when we post this discussion.
Yes, please let us know. And as always, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Dank Farrik.